Do not have a deficit in your adductors. We have evidence that these are the #1 muscle where strength is associated with a pain-free, well-functioning hip and quality of life. So if you have chronic tightness around your hip, just like we see with butt gripping and with hip flexor tightness, struggle with balance, or have alignment issues in your pelvis, low back, hip, or even scoliosis, check this out. Why are adductors so important? Because they move your center of mass. They center you, position you, they pull you, they stabilize you, shift you, lateralize you, so that you can offload one side and optimally load the other. Walking, one of the most important human movements, needs to be dynamic, alternating, oscillating, sinusoidal, rhythmic, efficient, which means you need to shift off of one side, pull to the other, catch and release. You won't be able to do it if your adductors don't pull you and center you. Here's a toolbox of my favorite techniques for strengthening adduction. Option number 1 is your Copenhagen 90-90. This is where I often like to start people. All you need is a bench or a chair. If you don't have that, just use a block. Rib cage and pelvis are stacked. You will feel your abdominals. Your abdominals and your adductors are a team. Bottom leg, keep the hip, knee, and foot parallel. Bottom shoulder needs to stay strong and wide. Top shoulder, you can play with the position. Hold for 30 to 45 seconds. If that is too much, try 10-second holds and repeat 3 times. Keep breathing. Option number 2 are our traditional Copenhagen adduction exercises. You can make it easier by keeping the lever short or progress it by lengthening the lever and moving away from the bench. You can introduce movement by tapping the bottom leg. You can make it much harder by tapping your hip. And the easiest option is keeping that bottom leg resting on the ground. Option number 3 is adding a cross connect, and I love this one. Think of cinching everything up as you bring your opposite knee and elbow together, and then when you reach them out, do not lose that rib to hip ratio, that rib cage and pelvis connection. Rib cage has to stay down. So good. Love this one. Option number 4 is another favorite. This is the DNS Copenhagen. In this technique, we add a rolling pattern, rotation, transverse plane motion, moving your pelvis around your femur. Think of a laser beam on your belly button and turn it towards the floor and then turn it towards the ceiling. Again with this, when you reach your arm and leg long, do not let them disturb the stability of your core, your rib cage and pelvis. Stay connected and strong. Option number 5 is a doozy. This is a PRI integration technique number 70. You have lots of options for modification. Number 1, you can go down to your elbow. Number 2, you can switch up which leg is in front. You can add training wheels by going to a wall. This will increase your grounding. It could be modified by not lifting that front leg, but if you don't, just make sure you spread your weight equally 50-50 between your legs so that adductor is working. And if you do lift that front leg, make sure your hips don't escape backwards into hip flexion. And you can modify it by bringing your hand down to your hips. But when your hand is up and behind your head, this is when we can get apical expansion, bias airflow, and get our ribcage and pelvis experiencing something new. Option number 6 is another PRI integration technique, the Swiss ball hip lift. This one is fabulous if you have an irritable shoulder and you don't want to load through it. This one is also fabulous if you are really feeling your neck with the other variations. And this is not a coincidence when you have weak adductors. FYI, I also have a bunch of adduction lift-off techniques coming up that are easier on your neck and shoulder, but great for adduction strength. So, details with this. The ball is in the corner of a wall. We want it stable. Your head and neck are supported. Your top arm is on the ground, pressing into the ground to get more abdominal activation. and you are just trying to lift your hips up. If this is too hard, you can still press the top leg down into the ball, and then instead of lifting the hip up off the ground, try at least lifting the knee up off of the ground. Let's talk about the details and the cues. For all of these, there are certain essential ingredients. Number one, ribs need to stay down in the front. We want your rib cage connected and stacked over your pelvis. You should 100% be feeling your abdominals, your core, your trunk muscles. Your adductors and your abdominals are a team. When you are loading your shoulder, it must stay wide, not elevated and protracted, wide. Push the ground away. And then breathe. Talk to me. You do not own this if you're not breathing.